Well, hello and welcome. You're watching The Week in Review with myself, Liesl Wilson. Of course, coming to you live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Let's get straight into it. Well, ANC delegates say they remain unshaken despite the court interdict that saw the IPC members prevented from voting at its 9th ANC conference held in Rustenburg in the Northwest Province. Operation Dudula hands a memorandum of their demands to Krugersdorp Police Station. And further afield, Kenya's Electoral Commission has denied claims of rigging and hacking of its systems as it continues to tally presidential election results. Right, those will look at your headlines. Let's get straight into some of those stories now. Some registered ANC delegates for the 9th Provincial Conference in the Northwest say they are delighted to have registered despite the court interdict by some disgruntled ANC members. They said this during the registration process at Olympia Stadium in Rustenburg this morning. Now, two of the ANC's 4 regions in the Northwest have registered, whilst the Dr. Ruth Sehomotsi Mompati and Dr. Kenneth Kaunda regions are currently registering for conference accreditation. Delegates say that they are looking forward to participating in the conference.
We are on the second day of the ANC Provincial Conference here in the Northwest, but precisely we are here in Rustenburg in Olympia Stadium, where delegates are here to collect their accreditation and as well as registering. But what we understand is that the registration has started late last night, yesterday in the evening. But the regions that have registered currently is the region of Bojanala and Ngaka Mudirimulema. Currently, the regions that are continuing to register as we speak is Dr. Kenneth Kaunda and Dr. Ruth Sehomotsi Mompati. But based on the developments that took place yesterday, we are going to talk to some delegates who have already registered to check if the development of the court interdict that says that the IPC members and the IRC members should not partake in the voting processes later today or tomorrow morning, to check with them that that doesn't bring any fear to them as that might also interdict this conference. But we are going to talk to some of the ANC members from Dr. Ruth Sehomotsi Mompati just to check how are they doing, have they registered and so on. They will tell us which branches are they coming from. Let me start with the first one here. My brother, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks very much. My name is Morutsi Le Oliphant. I'm from Ward 23 in Greater Taung sub-region. And as you can see, I've just emanated from a registration point and I've received my name tag. And I'm happy that after spending the whole night waiting for registration to kickstart, we are running the process very smooth. The process is running very smooth. We are happy, and the process is incident free, and then all delegates are happy. There is no any challenge with regard to that, although delayed. But we hope that the conference is going to proceed very well later today. So we are happy as a delegate.
Thank you very much for your time. Let me talk to other ANC members here. My brother, I can see that you have registered. I just see your name tag here. Now, based on the developments that took place yesterday, where there was a disgruntled members of the ANC who were not happy about the processes, interdicted this conference to say that the IPC and the IRC should not participate in the voting processes. What's your view with regards to that? Doesn't it bring any fear to you as a delegate of the ANC?
No, it not brings any fear from me as a delegate from Kagisano Molopo. First of all, I think we have to respect the court. So yes, they have granted them the court order yesterday. We respect the court order. There is no fear. We know why we are here. Yes.
So you are confident that the conference will continue as planned?
Yes, the conference will continue as planned. So we don't have any problem. So till now we know why we are here. Yes.
Thank you. Let me talk to the last one here. I can see you are smiling, and that smile shows that you have registered.
Yes, indeed, we have registered as delegates from Taung sub-region at Dr. Russo Montsemopati. We are very glad that at last the branches of the ANC are going to have a voice in this conference. And this conference was not for the IPC, it's the conference of the branches of the ANC. So we are very happy. There is no crisis. The IPC was there for to convene the BGMs and the BBGMs. So the branches are going to have a voice and decide and have the voice, so that we are going to take the ANC forward. We are very happy. I'm very excited. Thank you very much.
And lastly, yesterday's court interdict, what does it say to you? Does it bring any fear to you, or what's your view?
No. There is no fear. Branches of the ANC are here. Hence I'm saying this conference was not for the IPC. Whether interdict or what, the branches of the ANC and the delegates from the branches are not interdicted to have their conference. So we are very happy. And those are the process of the courts, the judiciary as the ANC. We respect the democracy and we respect the judiciary. So we are very happy, my brother. Even yourself, you will see on Monday, Nonoma Law is going to close this conference as the chairperson of this province. Thank you very much.
And lastly, maybe you take us through the processes inside. How is the process going inside here?
No, everything is very smooth. You see, there is no halabaloo, there is no noise, there is no fight. Because sometimes you are spreading the lies that there is no fight, there is a fight, you media. There is no fight here. The interdict, you must not spread that the lies, that there is a fight, the court, there is no conference. We see in the media that you are saying, they're speculating that there is a fight, the conference has been postponed for the 5th time. There is lies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my brother. Those are the members of Dr. Ruth Montsemopati who are expressing their views as far as the registration is concerned.
Right, that conference continues. We'll continue to bring you more news and updates here on the SABC. For now, though, let's take a quick ad break and continue with more on the other side. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. You're watching The Week in Review with myself, Liesl Wilson. Let's take a look at some of those stories making headlines and, of course, keeping South Africans talking. We are joined by political analyst Sanusha Naidu. A very good afternoon to you, Sanusha. Thanks for joining us here on the SABC.
Good afternoon, Liesl, and to the viewers. It's always a pleasure to be on the show.
I actually just want to, look at what transpired in the Northwest today, currently as the elective conference is underway. Obviously now hearing that the ANC Northwest IPC in essence will not have voting powers. So obviously the courts now ruled that the structures in the Northwest can't vote. And I wonder, what this, as they continue to run the conference, what are the consequences? What's set to transpire from here on to then?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way the press briefing went earlier this afternoon in terms of basically interpreting the court judgment is to say that it's not the entire conference that's interdicted and prevented from going forward or being held, but rather it's the IPC, the Interim Provincial Committee, that essentially has been interdicted. So there's 22 people or members of that interim committee that essentially will not have voting rights at the conference, but they can still attend as non-voting members. And that was what the press briefing that was held earlier this afternoon to give clarity on that court ruling and the interdict of the court ruling in terms of the conference. Now, what does this mean going forward is that those 22 members, again, the challenge is what the interpretation would be in the context of the ruling that came through, and more importantly, how much of a footprint they have within the branch structures and in terms of the kinds of deepening engagement that they have in the context of what the 22 votes will constitute in terms of quorum for the conference, but I think they may make the quorum. And of course, in terms of the final outcome of what the conference will produce in terms of the leadership. So I think I'm still looking at that in terms of implication, but I think that is where it stands now. So the conference will happen, but the 22 members of the interim provincial committee, I think they have been interdicted rather, to not be able to vote in terms of the conference itself.
Well, that's definitely a conference we're obviously monitoring on the SABC throughout the weekend. Again, just waiting for the outcomes of what's transpiring in the Northwest to date. Another story that has made headlines this week is obviously in relation to the alleged zamazamas in the West Rand. And, you know, it's obviously been spoken about quite profusely, given, you know, what's come through in terms of the violence and some of the other issues as well. And as we look at solutions on the continent, I mean, what are some of these long-term solutions for mines alone that have been left abandoned, perhaps by the bigger companies that perhaps create, you know, opportunity for them to exist at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think the derelict mines that are left behind after the mining operations have been completed, or depending on what the lifespan of a mining shaft is in terms of prospecting and then extracting the resources. I mean, it is always been that controversial, the dynamic in terms of extractive minerals and in terms of extractiveness in the context of what you are mining for. I mean, apart from the fact that these mines are left derelict and they left unattended, and they become not just what we've seen in the context of an activity or a hub of criminality and other dynamics, but also in terms of environmental challenges and of course geological challenges as well. It creates unstableness in terms of the geological implications it has for tremors and other environmental and climate change dynamics. So I think at the end of the day, the challenge is really around when you actually prospect for a mine, or when you actually go into a mining operation, whether you're talking about big companies or junior mining companies, the challenge is what kind of disclosure agreements you sign with them. What are they going to do once they find that the lifespan of the mine is no longer productive, it no longer has the kind of minerals that you are prospecting for, and of course you leave it and you move on to the next block or the next mining operation. And I think that is something that we have to think about much more seriously in the context of what the mining charter says. It's also in the context of the African mining charter linked to the AU, but also in terms of your bilateral mining charter, in the context of the fact that you've got a community now that has come out and said how risky it was, how their safety and security has been almost clearly violated in terms of what's happening. And it's not just on the context of what we see in terms of what has been an ongoing issue. And I think this ongoing issue of safety and security, where you know that these kinds of implications are happening, the safety and security of the community, the people, etc. Why hasn't there been a much more vigorous and a much more vigilant approach to the safety and security in that community? And I think this doesn't spur up in a moment. It has been there for more than I think 10, 15 years in terms of where these mines have been left unattended. So I think at the end of the day, the responsibility to protect, the responsibility both in terms of state and corporates have to be discussed.
Yeah, the justice system should be sending a strong message, but many questioning that given the time frames that have lapsed, you know, since these incidents have occurred and continue to occur, perhaps also the consequence management thereof. In your opinion, is the deployment of the tactical team, the Amabaretes, sustainable? If so, how?
You know, for me, Liesl, the problem is that you don't deploy after a situation. You've got to deploy to prevent the situation. You've got to deploy in terms of what is the strategic intervention to ensure that these areas are safe, to ensure that your national security is being addressed, to ensure that the the mines are not becoming these beds and hotbeds of what we have seen. And I think that's the problem. You can't deploy after a situation. Then you've got to deploy across the country wherever you have these situations emerging, not only in the mines. I think across the board in terms of what your national security agenda is and what your national security interests are. And I think the problem with this kind of reactive approach is that you've already had people's lives scarred. You've already had people's lives destroyed. They're going to live with this trauma for the rest of their lives. And I'm not sure how you take away that issue in terms of the deployment strategy. So you've got to have a much more stringent, you have to have a much more interventionist approach to your safety and security issues. You can't only now decide, oh, we're going to think about the cross-border question, we're going to think about the migration question. It comes across as very sensitive at times because, again, the challenge is there's a network that operates around these mines as well, and those networks are not only based on what happens in terms of cross-border. It's also networks that are domestic, and we need to find those dynamics in terms of having a much more cohesive, coherent policy in terms of intervention.
Yeah. Absolutely. Again, also a story the country awaits with bated breath to see how, it will be solved. But another tick box exercise that occurred this week was the marking of Women's Day on Tuesday. President Cyril Ramaphosa, in fact, condemned gender-based violence yet again. And as we begin to quantify perhaps the economic and even endemic social costs of GBV and femicide, compounded by triple threats, racial disparities, amongst others, I don't know what more to ask, but what more can be done other than just talking? I mean, is there much to celebrate during this commemoration?
I think the problem is that the rhetoric just keeps becoming more and more rhetoric, and it becomes much more than just saying, "Oh, we need to do this and we need to do that." The problem is that Women's Day has been marred by several events, or just in terms of how things have transpired, in terms of how much the rights of women are violated at every level of society, whether we talk about it in the context of race, or we talk about it in the context of class, we talk about it in the context of economics. It's just the violation of women's rights are just completely unimaginable and unconscionable in the context of not just South Africa but the world over. And I'm not sure if we are just lip syncing around the rhetoric of what needs to be done, because that's what it seems to be. Every single day you would have so many incidences of violations of women, both physically, emotionally, and I think that in itself tells you that the policies don't seem to be coherently and gelling with what the rhetoric is. And that means that there's something seriously wrong with the way in which the system is addressing the problem. And it's not just about a systemic risk, it's about a systematic question as well, in the context of whether or not you are putting in the policies, is it being implemented? I mean, it's something like when you hear the stories and how harrowing some of the stories are when women tell you what violations have happened to them, but also the violations that take place when you go to the police station and you think about how police actually respond to women when they present themselves in a case of whether it's rape or physical abuse or domestic violence or whatever. And I think that in itself is something that you can't say, oh, we're working on it. Because by now you should have actually managed to root out that kind of approach in terms of the bureaucracy, the reaction, the response. Let me give you an example. I mean, I tried to phone 10-111 the other day for something in my area, and I was put on an automated service saying, your call will be answered as soon as an operator is available.
So,
that should not be.
Yeah, in a case of an emergency, I mean, that doesn't stand. But it's also the power relations and power dynamics that come into question. But, it's the interest of time. I have to wrap up. Just very quickly, how do you weigh in on the newly sworn-in first female premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Nomusa Dube-Ncube? How significant is this? I mean, obviously, there's been a reshuffling of the KZN cabinet as well. And perhaps you could explore what it means, for the rest of the ANC come December's elective conference.
Yeah, I think it's quite an interesting one. First female interim premier for the province. I think that was being quite a welcomed approach in terms of the provincial structures of the ANC. We saw how jubilant the reaction was by sections of the constituency in KZN when she was being sworn in. I think it's still early days for us to make any kind of assessment in terms of what does this mean in going forward. But she has shaken up the executive. She's moved people around. She's brought back the former premier and so forth. And I think at the end of the day, she's also kind of went out and reacted to the stories about what was happening under her portfolio when she was MEC for finance. But I think at the end of the context now would be is what happens when she moves into when you move into the elective conference, when you move beyond the elective conference, when you start putting down the nomination list from the provincial list for the national and provincial election in 2024. Where will she fit on that list? Will she make that cut? And I think at the moment, it's really looking at those dynamics in terms of what happens in the context of KZN. Yes, it's not something that we can speculate right now on. I think it's very fluid in across the country when it comes to these provincial structures. We all are looking at December 2022, but again, December 22 may be a long time away, maybe not that long in the context of where we are currently in the year. But of course, the challenge is what happens in the context after 2022 and who actually makes those provincial lists and then go up to national and of course from provincial to national.
Sanusha Naidu, thank you very much for your time once again here on the SABC. Sanusha Naidu, political analyst, giving us an update on some of the big stories that made headlines throughout the week. On that note, let's take a look at some more stories that also made headlines this week.
Some of the stories in the news this week. Violence erupted in the West Rand, namely in the Mutlakeng and Kagiso areas. Members of the community burnt down shacks allegedly belonging to illegal miners. On Tuesday, South Africa celebrated Women's Day, where President Cyril Ramaphosa gave an address at Richmond in KZN. In his speech, he appealed to men to take responsibility for gender-based violence. On Wednesday, Nomusa Dube was sworn in as the new premier of KZN. This is after she defeated the DA's Mabato Tembe in a secret ballot during a legislature sitting. In her acceptance speech, she highlighted that she would be tackling unemployment in the province. Following Dube Ngube's appointment, a reshuffling of the cabinet took place in KZN. Former KZN Premier Sihle Zikalala was sworn in as MEC of Kokta in the province. The Special Investigating Unit ordered the freezing of millions of rands worth of assets belonging to two former Transnet executives, Thabo Lebelo and Patuchetsu Mashamba, and their families. Over 20 people appeared in the Durban Magistrate Court after allegedly instigating the public violence during the widespread unrest in KZN and Gauteng in July last year. All these suspects have been arrested on a large-scale operation by the Hawks. They're facing charges ranging from conspiracy and incitement to public violence, as well as incitement to commit arson.
Welcome back. The Week in Review continues. In other news, now Operation Dudula is calling for the Krugersdorp police station on Gauteng's West Rand to be placed under administration. It's also calling for the police district commissioner on the West Rand, Fred Kekana, to step down. This emerged from a Dudula march to the police station where 8 young women were gang raped at West Village in Krugersdorp last month, allegedly by undocumented foreigners who were working as illegal miners within the area. Now, 14 minors, including a 15-year-old, have been charged with the rape. Our reporter Mbalenhle Mthethwa has more.
It seems as though this is the beginning and one of many programs that the movement will be carrying out. And this stems from what we saw happening last week when it comes to community members trying to fight the issue of zamazamas in the area. We also heard some residents complaining about the issue of crime. We've seen the handing over of the memorandum of demands, and some of the demands that have come out of that memorandum of demands is the removal of the district commissioner as well as the removal of the station commander at the Krugersdorp police station. The Operation Dudula is accusing the police station of being inefficient, saying that it has done very little to address some of the issues of crime within the area, and also very little to do done very little to address the issue of zamazamas in the area. So just a short while ago, you would have seen a group of marchers just walking past me here. I'm joined by the Operation Dudula's deputy chairperson, who's going to give us a sense of why it is they have decided to hand over the memorandum, where they've handed it over, and what their demands are. Thank you so much again for taking the time to speak to us. Are you happy with the turnout? Are you happy with the memorandum having been handed over? Your thoughts?
No, we are very much happy with the turnout because other members are busy in other areas. There are activities all over. Because what was critical, it was not to show the numbers, but it was to get the message across. That's what was critical to us. But we're not happy with the reception from the police, because General Kekane knew that will be coming as early as Tuesday last week. So for him not to be available to receive the memorandum, and then I don't know whether it's a sign of undermining the people of West Rand when they try to talk to him, to get their grievances across, because they are calling for his resignation, because all this crime, all these incidents has happened under his nose, and all his police stations are under siege. Randfontein, Kagiso, so you can count them all. Right now, people of Westville village, they can't leave their houses after 6. There's a area called Epongweni. The ambulances can't go in even in there. What did he do about that? All along he did nothing. Only after this incident we see people jumping up and down. But this thing has been going on for years. Nothing has happened. So that sample says to us he's not fit enough to protect this area, to protect the people of South Africa. The best thing for him is to step down.
One of the demands is that the police station be put under administration. Your thoughts on why exactly have you made those calls?
We've made that call because the management of the police station should have noticed that there's a problem in the area and did something about it, or call for additional help, because the area is under siege. Nothing of that nature happened up until the recent incident of the children being raped within their jurisdiction. So if they were efficient, that wouldn't have happened. That simply shows the efficiency within them. They failed to protect the children. So why do they must react after the incidences instead of being proactive?
Now, what's the way forward from here? Now that you've handed over the memorandum of demands and it was not received by the person you had hoped to receive it, what are you going to do? Will you intensify the marches? What exactly is going to happen? We heard you talking about, potentially taking the march to the National Police Commissioner's offices. What's the way forward?
Yes, as we speak right now, there's a petition circulating within the communities, which is being signed by communities of West Rand, calling for the same demands for him to step down, for the police station to be placed under administration. So the only thing that we can do is to intensify, and we will take the fight to his seniors. We'll make sure we'll not rest until that happens.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. There you have it. That is Operation Dudula's deputy chairperson speaking to us about the reasons why people have come out in their numbers to march and hand over that memorandum of demands. You would have heard that they are calling for the particular police station in Krugersdorp to be placed under administration for its failure to address issues of crime. This stems from the incident that took place in the West Rand, where 8 young ladies were raped allegedly by zamazamas in the area. Also just saying that this is an indication of failures by the policing system within the area, and calls for that area to be, for police stations within the area to be put under or placed under administration. There is a petition that is doing the rounds where people are signing and calling for the removal of the station commander as well as the West Rand District Police Commissioner. It's back to you in studio.
Thank you very much, Mbadi Mtetwa, again, our reporter on the ground, giving us the latest there. As we move on to other news now, it's been another eventful week in parliamentary impeachment process, probing the fitness to hold office by suspended public protector, Advocate Busisiwe Mqwebane. This week, Mqwebane's legal team wrote to the inquiry to demand that the president be subpoenaed to appear before it.
President Cyril Ramaphosa's troubles appear to be mounting. Suspended public protector wants President Ramaphosa to testify at the Parliamentary impeachment inquiry. The president will also be probed by an independent panel of experts over whether there is sufficient evidence for him to be impeached. The acting public protector, Advocate Koleka Kaleka, and the Hawks are also investigating the president. And now Mkhwebane's legal team has written to the inquiry.
By now you would have received a letter from us from the 8th, that is the day before the public holiday, pertaining to the request that we are making to you to take the necessary steps to subpoena or summon President Cyril Ramaphosa, given the report that we last gave that he had declined the invitation to appear voluntarily.
The chairperson of the inquiry is yet to formally respond to the request, as well as another request to recall 2 witnesses, former SARS executives Ivan Pillay and Johan van Lochrenberg.
The other issues you have raised, especially the first 2, I take note of those. We'll wait for both letters, and we will give you feedback on both those issues.
Previously, the president had declined to appear before the inquiry as he was accused of labeling Mkhwebane a criminal, an allegation he denied. Meanwhile, a former investigator in the Public Protector's Office took to the stand and testified over the compilation of the CX report. Advocate Livuani Chuwalule told the inquiry the recommendation for the remedial action of a constitutional amendment to change the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank was there before Mkhwebane was appointed.
The evidence of the public protector will therefore be that the connection between the mandate issues and the lifeboat issue were not her invention, but something that she found already, as I've pointed out, already even demonstrated in the provisional report. Obviously, you'll agree with that because we've just looked at 3202, correct?
Yeah, yes, considering that she had an opportunity to go through the reports and the draft report when she arrived and all the evidence, yes, I would agree.
Mpofu argued that the remedial action was already being considered under former public protector, Advocate Thuli Madonsela.
But there's nothing that prevents the public protector or anybody for that matter, or Justice Zondo or whoever, from suggesting that the constitution should be changed one way or the other, either to bring back the death sentence or to change the voting system and so on. You'd agree with that as a general statement, correct?
Yes, I would agree with you on that. A suggestion, obviously, would not be something you want to put in the remedial action that is going to bind people. I imagine you do agree with me. You may put your suggestion probably in the body of the report, where you are discussing issues, or you are analyzing the evidence and everything, but you wouldn't put that as a direct instruction if you don't have, those powers, or you are going to overreach in some of the things that you are doing.
The CX report has since been set aside by the Constitutional Court, but Mpofu has relied on a minority ruling in that judgment to defend Mkhwebane's CX report. Later this week, another former senior investigator, Advocate Ndicheni Raidani, told the inquiry that several findings in the Friede Dairy Farm report were quashed in the final report, which Mkhwebane eventually allegedly penned herself. He says they were instructed to finalize the report, even though they had raised certain concerns, but considered Mkhwebane had the final say in the report. This included price inflation findings in the project, dismissing the Gupta leaks, and the inclusion of the names of former Free State Premier Ace Magashule and former Agriculture MEC Mosebenzi Zwane.
I told the PP that this is not going to look good from where I'm saying, because I think a lot of political commentators and legal experts will literally criticize us in the morning. And the PP, I presume she was on good mood. She wanted the report to go out. She just said to me in her language that Anginanda.
And what does that mean?
It basically translated, I don't care.
Raidani says Magashule, who was ANC Secretary General in October 2018, when the probe was reopened, was subpoenaed to answer. He says the meeting lasted half an hour, while ordinarily it would last a day.
And I remember one of the issues that transpired, it's Mr. Magashule was the person who approved this project, and he's the one who mentioned this project in his initial State of the Nation, the province address. And for the people to go to India to benchmark and investigate and do further investigation for the implementation of this project, Mr. Magashule is the one who approved it.
But under cross-examination, Raidani was forced to concede he had never directly had a conversation with Mkhwebane on the Gupta leaks. He also conceded he had no direct evidence that he was targeted by her. And then it was back to the issue of politicians and the Friede report. As Mpofu argued, some of the changes came following consultations.
The version of the public protector is going to be that is all that happened here. There was a series of information that was added or removed only as a result of the things that you have mentioned. A, internal debates. Two, the responses that were received from the Section 7-9 notices, but also in this particular case of Friede, because other agencies were either investigating a particular issue, and there's always, you have to make sure that you don't get into somebody else's space. As a broad framework of how the process unfolded, would you agree with that?
To be honest, to you and the committee, the public protector is entitled to canvass that version.
Raidani was also warned at times he was testifying under oath and should not give contradicting answers. The Friede Dairy Farm report has since been set aside. The inquiry will continue again next week, Tuesday, with the committee handling in-house matters. Ulelani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
The week in review with myself, Liesl Wilson, continues. This week, the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, touched down on the South African soil. The aim, of course, of the visit was to reset relations with South Africa. Meanwhile, Kenyans took to the polls, and the results have not been released as of yet. Well, these serve as some of the stories that made headlines on the international front. But perhaps for more on this, we're going to be joined by SABC International News Editor, Sophie Mukwena. Very good afternoon to you, Sophie. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Liesl.
Let's get into the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken's visit. Just before we get into the Kenya and Zimbabwe, I wonder if you could just give us an update or contextualize and summarize, what the visit ultimately meant in terms of resetting relations for us in relation to the U.S. What emerged?
Well, clearly the U.S. Secretary of State was on the continent to try and the relations between the United States of America and Africa in general. Of course, he chose 3 countries, starting with South Africa, and then he moved to the Democratic Republic of Congo, and of course the last stop was in Rwanda. The message was clear. The United States of America wants to continue to work with South Africa, both at a bilateral level, but also at multilateral institutions and globally on global issues. The same message was conveyed at the DRC, but also talking about the issue of the current tension in eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, where 23 rebels are terrorizing the community. And then, of course, in Rwanda, the issue was always going to be that. But Rwanda, on the other hand, saying that there are rebels, people who left Rwanda after the Tutsi genocide and fled to other countries, and these people are using the DRC to launch attacks, and therefore Rwanda saying they are defending themselves, and a message very clear from Rwanda that no one will dictate to Rwanda how they should ensure peace and security, above all protect the countries in territory. The same with South Africa. It was all about, yes, we are prepared to agree on issues that we share common position, but where we have our views, no one should dictate to us our thinking, but also who our friends are.
Absolutely. Then perhaps as we move on to Kenya, the east of Africa, I mean, on Tuesday, we saw Kenyans taking to the polls, and it's already the weekend. We're still waiting the results. What should we be making of the slow pace in the counting of votes? Perhaps also as we look at the cost of this election for the East Bloc, for the rest of Africa, and lessons that other African countries could also be learning as these elections are set to be announced soon.
The laws and the constitution, including the electoral laws, are clear in terms of how you conduct elections in Kenya, and you have 7 days to declare elections as the electoral body. And therefore, I think they are still within the limited time or the specified time in terms of declaring elections. And I think the electoral body is trying to ensure that there are no issues. You'd recall that in 2017, the elections were nullified because there was a rush to complete the process, and then they had to go for a rerun, which was quite expensive. Above all, in 2008, there was violence when elections were declared, and the Electoral Commission was found wanting. And I think this time around, as part of strengthening the processes, the electoral body has decided to follow procedures and ensure that they have not left any loophole in terms of whoever is likely to challenge this in court.
Well, there's obviously also some talk of Zimbabwe's opposition leader Nelson Chamisa congratulating Kenya for those elections. I believe there's a video also. Let's take a listen in.
Yes.
Well, we must congratulate the people of Kenya and Africa for a peaceful conduct so far. And they must know that peace is fragile. And peace has to be the most important asset for any nation. So yes, we have to continue on the mode of peace as citizens of Kenya, as citizens of Africa, but also to thank the political leadership thus far for maintaining peace and for being civil. And for making sure that there is a conversation around building a great Kenya. And I think we must appreciate so far what they've done. We don't know what the future holds. Even if there's going to be any dispute, let the dispute be managed within the confines of civility, peace, and an amicable understanding that we are a nation together in each and every of the African countries. We can only converse. It takes two to tango. You know, we are both hands that should come together, not to wash each other, but not only washing each other, but also to work with each other and with one another for the common good, not only of nations in their individual capacity, but also of the continent. And kudos to Kenya so far, including their election body that has shown a fantastic and transparent transmission system of votes. Yes, it has glitches here and there, but they've tried, and we must give them kudos.
Well, we'll continue to monitor that. Sophie, let me bring you back into the conversation. I mean, we're obviously preparing for the transition at large, but staying on Zimbabwe, just last week alone, we also saw that Zimbabwe's Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Trade had a meeting with South African counterpart, International Relations and Cooperations Minister Naledi Pandor, and they were discussing many issues, amongst others illegal migration. Given what has transpired in South Africa, perhaps even some of the sentiments around xenophobia and South Africa's perception on the continent, what really emerged there? How effective was it for the continent?
I think this meeting, the aim was to prepare for the binational commission that will take place later this year. That will be chaired by both President Emmerson Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe and President Cyril Ramaphosa. The agenda clearly, when they meet, will be focused on the current political and economic situation facing both countries. We know that Zimbabwe is struggling. We saw yesterday President Mnangagwa talking about this. And also South Africa, on the other hand, is also struggling. And the issue of immigration has become a sore point for South Africa, with many thousands of Zimbabweans crossing the border without proper documentation. And what I have observed is that this has even taken shape of child labor, those young kids who cross the border to come and work with the Zamazamas, exploited by the bullies, the senior ones, that we haven't touched their story. We are still dealing with the smaller men, but the big man, who is benefiting? Who is the main man behind this? And I think these are some of the issues they discussed. And Zimbabwe saying that they're willing to take their citizens back because the permits are going to expire, and if they are not renewed, they are ready to take their citizens back. But also in Zimbabwe, you have a challenge ahead of elections in 2023. The opposition crying foul that they are being denied the right to campaign freely, to engage freely. Today, Nelson Chamisa was supposed to address a rally, but the police declined to give his party permission to gather. Let's take a listen at what he had to say, because tomorrow he's got another rally. It's not clear yet whether that one will proceed, but let's take a listen at what he had to say about the political climate in Zimbabwe.
We are Zimbabwe. We are Zimbabweans. We are driving the heartbeat of our country in politics, in governance, in leadership. So any attempt to try and ban us as an organization is an attempt to ban the citizens of Zimbabwe. We are a citizen movement. We are not bannable. They will try to ban us. They will try to take away our buildings like they did with Harvest House when we were still in the yesteryear political formation. Now we are new. They will try all sorts of things. But, you know, we are not headquartered in buildings. We are headquartered in the hearts of Zimbabweans. We are a citizen movement. Our offices are in the hearts of the people of Zimbabwe. Our offices and headquarters are in the minds and convictions of the people of Zimbabwe. So I can tell you that we are unstoppable. And we are indomitable. We are unconquerable. They can try all sorts of tactics. They are desperate tactics, but those tactics are not going to help them. In fact, they are on their way out. We are the incoming government. They are the outgoing government. A very unfortunate development, but one that confirms that the CCC is the next government, and our colleagues in ZANU-PF are running scared and so afraid. They've resorted to desperate tactics and measures to try and shut us out, particularly in the countryside. You know, over the past 3 or so months, they've been banning our meetings, our rallies have been banned, and they're not happy to see us visible in communities. But what is interesting and exciting is that despite the bans, the people are supporting us. We have won overwhelmingly with a landslide and resoundingly in the by-elections. All the by-elections that have been held, they've been shutting us out, but still people support us and work with us. Not only have they banned our rallies, they've also banned us on the state television, the SABC TV. They've banned us on the state radio, the SABC radio, and even the Herald, which is the state-run, which is supposed to be a public institution, because it's a public-owned newspaper, but they've banned us in all those spaces. So we are not new to the bannings, but these bans are occasioned by this, fear and the phobia they have for the juggernaut called the CCC. The yellow movement has taken the whole country by storm, and they can't hold us, they can't manage us, and we are beyond them.
That's Nelson Chamisa, the leader of the CCC in Zimbabwe. And I think these are the issues that the international community is watching. But also the people who are still languishing in jail, some of them are members of parliament. This doesn't augur well for Zimbabwe. Yes, the ZANU-PF and government is likely to say that the separation of power in terms of the judiciary doing its job and the security cluster doing its job. But the reality is people are looking for political direction. And when you hear or see such stories, I don't think they are doing Zimbabwe any favor, particularly at the time when the country is working very hard to try and win the hearts and minds of international community, but also to strengthen the economic relations with other countries.
Absolutely. And also, just given the political climate in Zimbabwe, on the back of what was just echoed, I mean, we also have to look at the safety and security issue that's not only going to impact Zimbabwe, but also South Africa, perhaps even the rest of SADC region. But we'll leave the conversation there. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Weekend Review. Sophie Mukwena is is SABC's international news editor, giving us an update on some of the international stories that have made headlines this week. That is where we're going to leave it for you today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Tomorrow we take a look at the week ahead. But from myself, Liesl Wilson, and the team, until then, it's goodbye for now.